The vast expanse of the Galactic Union's archive chamber stretched endlessly, its towering shelves filled with ancient records, star charts, and historical data from civilizations long forgotten. Among these records was a file that had been sealed for millennia, a file most species believed to be nothing more than a legend, the humans. For generations, they had been whispered about in taverns and war rooms, in the dark corners of starships and among the scholars of the Galactic Union. Humans, a race so powerful, so dangerous, that their very existence had become a myth. Some said they had once dominated vast regions of space, while others claimed they were wiped out by their own aggression, consumed by their own wars, but none had ever seen them, and many assumed they were simply a cautionary tale passed down to keep young races in line. Until now. Terran, a young archivist of the Zephorians, stood before the sealed file. His violet eyes scanned the glowing hologram that shimmered above the metal disc embedded in the floor. The file was marked with a single word in Old Galactic, a language few still remembered, Humanis. For years, Terran had heard the stories, but like most, he believed them to be exaggerations. After all, no species could be as dangerous as the humans were said to be, able to destroy worlds with a flick of their hand, surviving in the harshest of conditions, and fighting with a resilience that defied logic. But a recent discovery had brought the myth crashing into reality. A starship, old and derelict, had been found in the deepest reaches of uncharted space. Its hull bore strange markings, symbols that no species in the Union could recognize. Yet, in the heart of the ship's navigation logs, a single word kept repeating, Earth. "I need access to the file," Terran murmured, glancing at the archive's AI assistant, a small spherical drone that floated nearby. The drone whirred, its sensors flashing as it scanned the sealed file. "This file is restricted to Class 7 clearance and above," it replied in its monotone voice. "You do not have the authorization." Terran clenched his fists. "I know I don't, but this is important. That ship we found, it could be human." The drone remained silent for a moment, then spoke again. "The human species is classified as mythological. There is no concrete evidence of their existence." "Until now," Terran muttered under his breath. Suddenly, the archive doors slid open with a hiss, and in walked Captain Raxer, leader of the Galactic Union's elite exploration team. His armored form cast a long shadow as he approached Terran, his reptilian eyes gleaming with curiosity. "You're still digging into the humans?" Raxer asked, his voice deep and gravelly. "I thought you archivists dealt with facts, not stories." Terran turned to face him, determination etched on his face. "What if they're not just stories, Captain? What if they were real? That ship," the markings matched the description of ancient human vessels. Raxer tilted his head, his ridged brow furrowing. "I'll admit, the ship we found is unlike anything we've ever seen. But humans? Even if they were real, they've been gone for tens of thousands of years." Terran shook his head. "What if they never disappeared? What if they're still out there, hiding, waiting?" The captain crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "You think they could still be alive, after all this time?" Terran took a deep breath. "I don't know, but I want to find out." 3 days later, Terran found himself aboard the Valiant, Captain Raxer's flagship, headed toward the coordinates of the derelict ship. The atmosphere on board was tense. The crew, made up of a mix of species from across the Union, whispered among themselves. The idea of humans still existing had stirred something deep within them: excitement, fear, curiosity. As they neared their destination, the stars outside the viewport seemed to grow darker, the space around them thicker, almost oppressive. The derelict ship came into view, its once mighty hull now a decaying skeleton floating through the void. "This is it," Raxer said, his eyes narrowing as they approached. "Prepare to board." Terran's heart pounded in his chest. What if the stories were true? What if they were about to uncover the last remnants of the most powerful species the galaxy had ever known? The boarding party entered the ancient vessel with caution. The ship was silent, its corridors cold and eerie, like a tomb lost to time. Faded symbols lined the walls, their meaning lost to history. But as they ventured deeper, Terran's scanner began to pick up faint signs of life, human life. "This way," Terran whispered, leading the group toward the ship's core. They reached a large, sealed chamber. Terran's hands trembled as he activated the door's manual override, and with a groaning creak, the door slid open. Inside, they found stasis pods, dozens of them, and in each pod, there lay a human, their bodies perfectly preserved, their faces peaceful as if they had been asleep for millennia. "They're real," Raxer muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. Humans are real. Terran stepped forward, staring in awe at the sleeping figures, but before he could react, one of the pods began to glow. The soft hum of machinery filled the air as the stasis field deactivated, and slowly, the pod opened. A human man, tall and muscular, with battle scars etched across his body, stepped out. His eyes, sharp and piercing, scanned the room before locking onto Terran and the others. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the human spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "You're not the first to wake me," he said, "but you will be the first to see what we truly are." Terran's heart raced as the human stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. The legends hadn't been exaggerated, they had underestimated the truth. "We were never just a myth," the human said, his voice filled with quiet power. "We are humanity, and the galaxy has forgotten what we are capable of." Terran and the crew exchanged uneasy glances. The human's words sent a chill down their spines. If this was only one of them, what would happen if they all woke up? The human smiled faintly, as if reading their thoughts. "You came looking for us. Now, the galaxy will remember." As the stasis pods began to hum back to life, Terran realized the truth. The humans had never been a myth, they had simply been waiting. And now, the galaxy would once again witness the rise of humanity. Terran's breath caught in his throat as more stasis pods flickered to life. The chamber, once a forgotten tomb of legends, now buzzed with the low hum of ancient machinery, awakening from eons of silence. The human who had first emerged stood tall and composed, his gaze never leaving the alien crew, his presence commanding. Captain Raxer, usually stoic and fearless, took a cautious step forward. His claws twitched nervously at his side as he addressed the towering figure before him. "You're human?" he asked, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic hint of uncertainty. The human nodded slowly, his piercing eyes scanning the group as if assessing their every move. "I am Lieutenant Commander Darius Hale of the Terran Fleet," he said, his voice calm but laced with an intensity that sent a shiver down Terran's spine. "And yes, we are human. We are what remains of the last defense force of Earth." Earth. Terran's mind raced at the mention of the mythical homeworld of humans, the planet that had been lost to the ages. To most species in the Galactic Union, Earth was a forgotten word, nothing more than a ghost story. But to hear it spoken aloud by one who had lived through its fall, a survivor of humanity's legendary strength, it was as though a dormant part of history had come alive. The rest of the crew stood frozen, unsure of what to say. There was something terrifying about Darius, something beyond his physical presence. It was in the way he carried himself, as if the weight of 1,000 wars rested on his shoulders, as if he had seen things that none of them could comprehend. Finally, Raxer regained his composure. "What happened to your people? The galaxy thought humans were wiped out. Nothing but myths and stories. How are you here, after all this time?" Darius's expression darkened, his eyes growing cold. "We weren't wiped out. We fought until the galaxy had forgotten us, until the stars themselves abandoned us, and then we slept, waiting for the right time." Terran's heart pounded in his chest. Humans hadn't disappeared, they had gone into hiding. The implications of such a revelation sent waves of unease through him. If these humans had been in stasis for thousands of years, how many more could there be? What were they waiting for? As if reading his thoughts, Darius's gaze shifted to Terran, his piercing eyes locking onto him. "You found us, and now, we must decide if you are friend or foe." The silence in the chamber was suffocating. The alien Marines, the most elite soldiers in the Galactic Union, suddenly felt small in the presence of this human, this relic of a forgotten era. Terran could see the unease in their eyes, could feel the weight of their uncertainty. "We came seeking answers," Terran said cautiously, trying to keep his voice steady. "We didn't know if the stories were true. We never imagined humans still existed." Darius's gaze softened slightly, though his demeanor remained guarded. "For centuries, we were the protectors of the galaxy. When the wars came, we fought until we could no longer hold the line. We were betrayed, abandoned by the very beings we swore to protect. So, we chose to disappear, to wait." Raxer's reptilian eyes narrowed. "Wait for what?" Darius's lips curled into a faint smile, one that sent a chill through the crew. "For the galaxy to forget what it was capable of. For the galaxy to forget its defenders. And now that you've awoken us, it's time for humanity to reclaim what was once ours." Terran felt a lump in his throat. There was something ominous in the way Darius spoke. as though the humans had been waiting not just to survive, but to rise, as if their return would bring with it a reckoning that the galaxy was unprepared for. "You intend to rebuild your empire?" Terran asked, barely able to contain his anxiety. Darius didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward the stasis pods, which were now fully powered, their occupants slowly beginning to stir. "We intend to reclaim what is rightfully ours. The galaxy has forgotten us, but it will remember soon enough." Captain Raxor's claws flexed, his instincts screaming that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. "The galaxy has changed. Human, the Galactic Union stands united now. There are new powers, new alliances. If you seek war, you'll face enemies you've never seen before." Darius tilted his head, considering the captain's words. "We've seen the worst the galaxy has to offer. War is in our blood. We were forged in it, but we are not your enemies, not unless you make us so. We seek only what was taken from us, our place among the stars." Terran stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly. "If the Union knew of your survival, they'd see you as a threat. They'd move to stop you before you could gain power again." Darius chuckled softly, though it wasn't a laugh of amusement. "Let them try. Humanity is not a threat to those who seek peace, but those who would oppress us, those who would try to subdue us, will learn why we were once feared across the galaxy." As more humans emerged from the stasis pods, their weary eyes scanning the chamber, the sense of tension grew. They were soldiers, every one of them, with battle-hardened expressions and the unmistakable air of war about them. They moved with precision, as if waking from sleep had only sharpened their instincts. Terran's mind raced. What had they just uncovered? The humans were more than just survivors, they were soldiers of a lost era, and now they were awake, ready to face a galaxy that had long forgotten them. Captain Raxor exchanged a look with Terran, the unspoken question hanging in the air: what do we do now? The decision was not an easy one. They had come searching for answers, but they had found something far more dangerous: an entire race of warriors who had once ruled the stars, now ready to rise again. Darius stepped forward, his expression serious but calm. "We don't seek to conquer, but we will not be ruled. Tell your Galactic Union this: humanity has returned. We will fight if we must, but we would prefer peace." Captain Raxor nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll deliver your message." With that, Darius turned back toward his people, his voice rising to address the newly awakened humans. "Prepare. The galaxy thinks we are nothing but a myth. Let them believe what they want for now." As the valiant crew prepared to leave the ancient ship, Terran cast one last glance at the humans, his mind reeling. They were real, the myths had been true, and now, they were back, ready to remind the galaxy what they were capable of. But as he stepped back onto the shuttle, a thought gnawed at him. If humans had once been protectors and feared warriors, what would happen now that they had returned to a galaxy that had forgotten their strength? The legends were only the beginning. The reality of humanity's return would change everything. And soon, the galaxy would remember the truth about the species it had cast aside as nothing more than a myth. As the valiant shuttle detached from the derelict ship and drifted back toward Captain Raxor's flagship, Terran sat in stunned silence, his thoughts racing. The humans, once considered nothing more than bedtime stories for young aliens, were real, and now they were awake, ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. It was a truth he struggled to process. How could a species, buried by history, return with such power? Raxor stood near the cockpit, his gaze fixed on the derelict ship they had just left behind. The unease in his posture was clear. Terran had never seen his captain so rattled. It wasn't the awakening of the humans that disturbed Raxor, it was what came next. "What do we do?" Terran finally asked, breaking the silence. Raxor turned to face him, his reptilian eyes narrowing as if weighing the gravity of the question. "We tell the Union what we found. We give them the message," Darius delivered. But, he hesitated, his claws flexing as he searched for the right words. "There's more to this than we're prepared for." Terran leaned forward, curiosity and fear warring in his chest. "What do you mean?" Raxor glanced out the viewport once more, his voice low. "The humans aren't like us, Terran. They aren't just another species trying to survive. There's something else, something forged in the fires of war, hardened in a way we can't fully comprehend. I've seen many soldiers in my time, but none like Darius and his kind. They don't fear what's coming, they welcome it." Terran shivered. He had felt it too, the way the humans carried themselves, as if they were born to face the worst the galaxy could throw at them. They had the look of beings who had seen the collapse of empires, the fall of worlds, and come out the other side still standing. The galaxy had evolved since humanity had vanished, but now it was clear that the humans had evolved too. "They've been waiting," Terran said, half to himself, "waiting for the galaxy to forget them, so they could rise again." Raxer nodded grimly. "And now we have to figure out where we stand in this. The Galactic Union has fought wars before, but we've never faced anything like this. The humans were supposed to be a myth, and myths have a way of turning into legends. Legends become power, and power, well, you know how that story ends." The shuttle docked with the Valiant, and the crew disembarked into the cavernous hangar. As Terran followed Raxer through the bustling corridors, the atmosphere on the ship felt heavier, as if the entire crew could sense the enormity of what they had just uncovered. It wasn't just a discovery, it was a reckoning. Hours later, in the war room of the Valiant, the command staff of the Galactic Union fleet gathered around a holographic display. The image of Earth, long thought to be a fable, glowed faintly in the center of the room. Raxer stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as he briefed the assembled officers on what they had found. "The humans are real," Raxer said simply, his voice cutting through the murmurs of disbelief. "They've been in stasis for thousands of years, waiting, and now, they've woken up." The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of the hologram. "They are alive?" Commander Zek, a slender and sharp-featured Lyran, asked, his eyes wide with shock. "How is that possible? No species could survive in stasis for that long." Raxer shook his head. "They did, and they're not the same humans from the stories. They're soldiers, fighters who survived the destruction of their empire. They claim they don't seek war, but if it comes to them, they'll be ready." Terran watched the reactions of the officers around the table. Some were clearly alarmed, while others seemed skeptical. How could they not be? To them, the idea of humans was still a distant legend, not a reality standing before them. Admiral Jorak, a massive Grather with tusks that gleamed under the war room lights, slammed a heavy fist onto the table. "If they're preparing for war, we need to be ready to strike first. We can't allow them to gain strength. This could destabilize the entire Union." Terran opened his mouth to protest, but Raxer spoke first. "We don't know enough about them yet to make that decision." Darius Hale, their leader, made it clear they aren't looking to conquer. They want their place in the galaxy, but they won't be ruled. "Do we take them at their word?" Jorak growled, his eyes narrowing. "What if they're just biding their time, preparing to reclaim what they lost by force?" A tense silence followed. Terran felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The humans he had met weren't conquerors, they were survivors, warriors who had endured the unthinkable. But Admiral Jorak wasn't wrong to be cautious. A species like humanity, with their history of warfare and resilience, could be the key to the Union's survival or its undoing. "We send a delegation," Terran said suddenly, drawing the attention of the room. "We engage with them, diplomatically. We don't know enough about their intentions, and if we act aggressively, we might provoke the very war we're trying to avoid." Raxer considered his words carefully. "A diplomatic mission could work. We need to understand more about them, and we can't do that if we go in guns blazing." Admiral Jorak snorted in derision but didn't object. It was clear the idea of sending a delegation sat uneasily with him, but even he knew a full-scale conflict without information would be disastrous. After several more tense exchanges, the plan was set. A diplomatic team would be sent to the humans to establish contact, to learn their true intentions and see if peace was truly possible. Terran, to his surprise, was chosen to be part of the team, along with Captain Raxer. The diplomatic shuttle glided silently through the dark void of space, heading back toward the ancient human ship. Terran sat beside Raxer, the tension between them palpable. Both knew that this mission would decide the future of the Union and the fate of the galaxy. As they neared the derelict ship once more, the human's vessel loomed large, its sleek but ancient design exuding a quiet power. The memory of Darius Hale's commanding presence lingered in Terran's mind. The humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. This meeting could either cement an alliance or spark a conflict that would ripple through the stars. The shuttle docked, and as the airlock cycled open, Terran's heart raced. Stepping onto the human ship again felt different this time, as if they were crossing into uncharted territory. Waiting for them was Darius Hale, flanked by several other human soldiers, their postures relaxed but their eyes watchful. "Welcome back," Darius said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of authority. "I assume you've come to talk." Raxer stepped forward, his reptilian eyes meeting Darius's. "We have. The Galactic Union wants to understand your intentions. We need to know what your people are planning, and if we can find a path forward together." Darius smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We aren't here to conquer. We've had enough of war, but make no mistake, we won't be subjugated. If the Union wants peace, we'll welcome it, but if they come for us, we'll fight." Terran felt the weight of Darius's words, and for the first time, he truly understood what they were dealing with. The humans weren't just survivors, they were the embodiment of a spirit that refused to break, a force that had waited in the shadows of history, ready to rise again. "We don't want war," Terran said, stepping forward, "but the galaxy will fear you. They'll remember the stories and wonder if you're the same humans who once ruled with unmatched power." Darius's eyes softened slightly, and for a moment, the weight of centuries seemed to rest on his shoulders. "The galaxy can remember what it wants, but we aren't here to reclaim an empire. We're here to ensure our people have a future." Raxer nodded slowly, understanding that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. "Then let's find that future together." As the conversation continued, Terran knew that this was only the beginning. The humans had returned, and their place in the galaxy was yet to be decided. But one thing was certain, the myth had become reality, and humanity would no longer be forgotten. The galaxy was about to remember what humans were truly capable of. And this time, they wouldn't be legends. They would be history in the making. The negotiations between the humans and the Galactic Union had begun in earnest. Days turned into weeks as the diplomatic shuttle continued its journeys between the human ship and the Union's leadership. The tension that hung over the talks was undeniable. The humans, once thought to be mere myths, were real, and their presence stirred fear, curiosity, and awe among every species in the Union. Terran had spent much of his time on the human ship, learning more about their history, their culture, and their purpose. Each day, he discovered new layers to their story. What had once been a powerful empire that spanned countless systems had now become a scattered remnant, reduced to a few survivors in stasis, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Darius Hale, their leader, had been forthcoming, though always guarded. He spoke of humanity's rise and fall, of wars that had consumed the galaxy long before most current species even existed. The humans had fought for survival, protecting the galaxy from threats no one remembered. But in the end, they had been betrayed by those they once called allies. Faced with extinction, humanity had chosen to disappear, to go into stasis and wait until the galaxy was ready for them once again. And now, that time had come. It was on the eve of the final meeting between the humans and the Union's delegation that Terran found himself standing alone in the observation deck of the human ship, staring out at the distant stars. His mind was heavy with the weight of the decisions that were about to be made. Humanity's return had already sent ripples through the galaxy, and whatever happened next would change everything. He heard footsteps behind him, soft but unmistakable. Darius Hale stepped forward, his presence as commanding as ever, though there was a quietness to his demeanor that Terran hadn't seen before. "You're troubled," Darius said, his voice low, as if he could read the weight on Terran's shoulders. Terran sighed, not turning from the viewport. "This is bigger than any of us. The Union doesn't know how to handle your return. Half of them want peace, the other half want to destroy you before you can become a threat." Darius remained silent for a moment, then spoke with a calm resolve. "That's always been the way of the galaxy. Fear drives people to act before they understand what's at stake." Terran finally turned to face him. "And what is at stake, Darius?" "The Union fears you'll try to rebuild your empire, that you'll see the rest of us as weaker and take control." Darius chuckled softly, though there was no humor in his voice. "Rebuilding an empire? No, Terran, that's not what we want. We've had our time in the spotlight, and it led to our near destruction. We don't seek to rule." "Then what do you seek?" Darius's eyes softened, and for the first time, Terran saw something more than the hardened soldier. He saw a man who had lived through unimaginable loss. "We seek a future, a place for our people to survive, to rebuild what little we have left. We've seen the worst the galaxy has to offer. We don't want to dominate, we want to live in peace, but we won't be pushed aside." Terran nodded, his heart heavy. He wanted to believe Darius, and part of him did, but the Union wouldn't trust so easily. History was a heavy burden, and humanity's history was written in blood. "Tomorrow's meeting will decide everything," Terran said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If they decide to see you as a threat, if they choose war. Darius turned back toward the stars, his expression unreadable. Then we'll fight, but only if we have to. There was a long pause, the silence filled only by the hum of the ship's systems. Terran could feel the tension in the air, the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. But there was something else too, a sense of inevitability. No matter what happened, humanity had returned, and the galaxy would have to reckon with that. We'll find a way, Terran said, more to himself than to Darius. There has to be a way to avoid war. Darius gave him a small, knowing smile. Let's hope the Union sees it that way. The next day, the final meeting between the human delegation and the Galactic Union's leadership took place aboard the Valiant. The chamber was filled with representatives from countless species, each one watching the proceedings with a mix of fear, suspicion, and hope. Terran sat beside Captain Raxer, his heart pounding as the human delegation, led by Darius Hale, stood before the assembled council. This was it. This was the moment that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Admiral Jorak, representing the Union's military interests, was the first to speak, his voice booming through the chamber. We have heard your words, Commander Hale. We have listened to your plea for peace, but many among us still believe that humanity, once awakened, will become a threat to the stability of the Union. Darius met the Admiral's gaze with unwavering calm. We have no desire to threaten the Union. We seek only a place to rebuild, to exist in peace, but we will not allow ourselves to be oppressed or controlled. The room buzzed with murmurs as the delegates exchanged uneasy glances. We have seen the power of your people in the past, Admiral Jorak continued. Your wars, your weapons, they were unmatched. How can we trust that you won't rise again to claim dominion over the stars? Darius remained steady, his voice strong and clear. Because we've learned from our past, we've paid the price for our power, and we've seen what it leads to. The galaxy doesn't need another empire. It needs balance. We offer our hand in peace, but we will defend ourselves if forced to. The tension in the room was palpable. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and everyone knew it. Finally, it was Captain Raxer who stood to speak. The humans have proven their intentions. They've had countless opportunities to strike, to take control, and they haven't. They want peace. If we deny them that, if we push them into a corner, we'll be the ones responsible for whatever comes next. Terran watched as the council deliberated, the weight of history pressing down on them all. He could feel his breath catching in his chest, the uncertainty gnawing at him, but deep down, he knew that this was a turning point one way or another. The galaxy would change. After what felt like an eternity, the decision was made. We accept your terms, Admiral Jorak said, his voice grudging but resigned. The Union will grant humanity a place to rebuild, under the condition that they respect the sovereignty of the other member species. Any violation of this agreement will be met with swift consequences. Darius nodded, his expression unreadable. We accept. The tension in the room seemed to lift, though only slightly. The council adjourned, and as the delegates began to file out, Terran felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The galaxy had chosen peace, for now. As he and Raxer made their way back to the shuttle, Terran caught Darius's eye from across the room. The human leader gave him a small nod of acknowledgement, a silent promise that their paths would cross again. You did it, Raxer muttered as they boarded the shuttle. You stopped a war. Terran shook his head. We stopped it for now, but the galaxy is watching. Humanity's return will change everything. Raxer gave him a sideways glance, his eyes glinting with understanding. Change can be good, or it can be dangerous. Let's just hope we've chosen the right side. As the shuttle lifted off and the stars filled the viewport, Terran allowed himself to hope. Humanity had returned, but they weren't the conquerors of old. They were something else now, something stronger, wiser, and perhaps more dangerous in their restraint. The galaxy would remember them, not as myths, but as the people who had survived the impossible and come back to find their place among the stars. And no matter what came next, Terran knew one thing for certain. Humans were no longer a legend. They were the future.